Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Sherwood Elementary School Community Forum. I would love to introduce to you our superintendent, Dr. Balderas. Dr. Balderas, thank you for being here.
Thank you. And before we get started, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Snohomish people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes, who since time immemorial have taken care of, hunted, fished, and gathered on these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. By acknowledging these homelands, we are also committing to working with tribal nations to further the educational aims they have identified in our classrooms and schools. So thank you for that. I'd like to say a few words. And before we get started, I'd really like to just make a comment about the civil unrest that's currently the riots at our nation's capital. I know this is a community forum for our youngest learners, but some parents have older kids as well in our system. But the riots in our nation's capital, and even Governor Inslee's residence today, we at schools, we really work towards having civics education be throughout our system and really have civil discourse throughout and teach kids how to have civil discourse and really have the opportunity to agree to disagree in a manner that's respectful. And I know that the inauguration and weeks and months to come are going to cause some concern possibly with our students, our older kids, not so much our youngest learners, but we need to, again, continue to acknowledge our differences in a very respectful manner and continue to work with our kids throughout our system to be able to do so. I know the students will be impacted, some of our older kids especially that maybe are online. But again, I know some of these parents, some of you parents today, some of the community members on today do have older students as well. So we really want to acknowledge that. And I really want to thank you for being here tonight to listen in, to really talk about what the situation we have is really the lack of space at all our elementary schools. We're over capacity at the elementary level. And this tonight we're discussing Sherwood and the impact of that overcapacity that we have. In our elementary schools for Sherwood Elementary, and look forward to the discussion and the questions that people have and see if we can come up with some resolution that is suitable for all involved. I'm going to turn it over to Harmony.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Harmony Weinberg, and I'm the communications manager of the Edmonds School District. And I just wanted to go ahead and let you know that we do have our Spanish interpreter who has joined us. So at the bottom of your webinar function, you should be able to see a interpreter button. And so we encourage for Spanish interpretation to go to that room.
Harmony, let me do that real quick, Harmony, too. Si están escuchando en español, hay un botón abajo de la pantalla que se dice interpretación para los que necesitan que escuchar en español también. Gracias. Thanks, Harmony.
Thank you, Dr. Balderas. So I wanted to introduce our panel tonight. So we have, as you saw, Dr. Balderas, our superintendent, is joining us. Dr. Helen Jung is our assistant superintendent of elementary schools. We also have Greg Schwab, who is our assistant superintendent of secondary schools. Lydia Selly is joining us tonight, and she is our executive director of business and finance. And we also have your beloved principal, Christy Kessler from Sherwood. Darcy Becker is here with us, and she is our early learning manager. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over now to Lydia.
So thank you, everybody, for joining. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background so that it provides a little bit more context on how we got to where we're at. Realize that Sherwood and Westgate are both older schools. They were built at a time when population was pretty much exploding. So you can see in the next bullet that I have that we've gone from 2,000 residents in the 50s to just over 42,000 today. So we have added those schools, but those schools were built in 67 and 58. And another thing that happened during this time is when schools were built, we had half-day kindergarten. Since about 13-14 school year, all states all school districts in the state have added full day programs, which is essentially doubled the number of kindergarten classrooms that we need. We have also made progress towards reducing class sizes in grades K through 3, again, at the request of the state. And that, just to reiterate, that overcrowding is not just about the number of classrooms. There's a lot of infrastructure in common spaces. I've listed the gym, the library, the restrooms. We also have things like parking, and also when we're overcrowded, we have safety considerations that we have to monitor. So prior to the district put a bond measure on the ballot last February, and for about 2 years before that bond measure was actually put on the ballot, we started researching solutions to not just Sherwood and Westgate, but the fact that our total district elementary enrollment is already at 107% capacity district-wide. And our demographers indicate that both in the next 5 years and 10 years, our district is going to continue to grow. So the solution that we were looking for in the bond was to move the 6th graders to middle schools and therefore have a 6-8 middle school model. That would require us building a 5th middle school at the former Alderwood Middle School site in order to allow capacity to move those 6th graders. We also have property near Linwood High School that is intended for another elementary school. And then with that new elementary school, we would draw new boundaries. So the bond measure was not successful last February. And therefore we just don't have the resources to accomplish all those projects. I also wanted to point out that we have considered remodeling former Woodway to make it K6 ready. It did not make the list of items that was recommended in the bond measure because the district has identified about 3 times the need that the $600 million bond measure had within it. So because we don't have our long-term option, and in addition, our long-term option would have taken a few years to complete that 5th middle school in order to move the 6th graders out. So even before we put that bond measure on the ballot, we determined that we needed to address Westgate and Sherwood's overcrowding. So all the short-term options, and when I say short term, I tend to mean like 3 to 5 years. The bond is the bond is intended to be a much more permanent solution, but we are looking at 3 to 5 years. So we can make do with the current situation, which is what we've been doing. Nobody has to move, but really we've got a host of problems at the 2 schools. Hopefully nobody has encountered any parking disasters at Westgate. I know that someone did bump into the portable one time. At Sherwood, students don't have the ability to eat in a cafeteria because we only have gym space, and gym space needs to be used for both music and PE and some other programs. So students have to eat in their classroom. Everything is really pretty tight. It really doesn't address the long-term problem if we just continue on as is. So, and I really did talk about this being the option based on whether or not the bond was successful. So another short-term option that we've considered is adjusting elementary boundaries. Certainly that would alleviate some of the crowding, but because we're at 107% capacity in the district, there aren't any elementaries really that we can send Sherwood and Westgate students to. Edmonds Elementary has a little bit of room maybe 30 students, which would be about 15 students from both Sherwood and Westgate. In order to really have relief at Sherwood and Westgate, we've identified that we need to move about 80 students out of each school. Another option is to add relocatables, which most people know as portables. The biggest challenge here is there's a long lead time on obtaining relocatables. Usually it's about an 18-month window. Each relocatable provides, another classroom that can house about 24 students, but it doesn't increase the number of bathrooms or the cafeteria or the parking. So in other words, it doesn't increase our infrastructure capacity. It requires a permit by the city of Edmonds. Sherwood, before that permit would be issued, needs a new fire lane in order to provide fire access to the back of the school. And Westgate would require parking mitigation, and we're not sure that the city of Edmonds would allow for that permit because of the tightness of the spot and the difficulty in mitigating parking and traffic currently. Another short-term option that we considered is we have been approached over the years, other community organizations or churches that said, hey, we could lease a couple classrooms to you. The challenge there is that we already have another facility available. So this is usually the very last option to a district when they don't have any space available. So we are no longer considering this option. So that leads us to the remaining two options, which one is to utilize Woodway Elementary for a kindergarten hub. We could open a kindergarten hub with 8, 9, 10 classrooms from both Westgate and Sherwood, which would relieve both the classroom needs as well as the infrastructure problems. The Woodway Elementary is available. It's not needed for any remodels of our existing schools for at least 5 years. It did operate as an elementary the last time we did a remodel of one of our existing elementary schools back in 1718. And of course, the con is that, that's disruptive to families and staff, and kindergarten school students would have to change when they went to first grade. The other feasible option is to move sixth graders at both schools to College Place Middle. Kind of the same as a kindergarten center. It does allow for relief of overcrowding for both infrastructure and classroom space. And want to point out, and we'll talk a little bit this when we get to the sixth grade specifically from another panelist, is that we spent about 2 years before the bond was placed on the ballot discussing all the aspects of a 6th through 8 middle school model. The challenge here is that our e-learning program is currently housed at College Place Middle School, and that program would need to be relocated. And the same as the kindergarten hub, disruption to families and staff. And they don't get to complete their elementary experience at their current school. The other difficulty we're having is that we've identified about 8 to 9 classrooms of kindergartners that we'd expect next fall. But because 6th grade classrooms are larger and we have a little bit fewer 6th graders, we're thinking 4 to 5 classrooms could move to College Place Middle School. So it's not quite as much relief as the first alternative. And I thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Darcy Becker.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Darcy Becker. As part of this presentation tonight, I was asked to really kind of envision what might be the benefits of a kindergarten hub. what might, because it's not something that we've done here in Edmonds, what might be benefits from that kind of model. So I listed some things here. We all know kindergarten is such an important year, and our kindergarten teachers at both Sherwood and Westgate have really worked hard and have provided wonderful, rich classroom environments for kindergartners. And we could continue to build on that, given additional space and additional opportunities for doing some innovative kinds of maker spaces or art labs. I mean, there's when you have more space available, you can do some kind of interesting things. So that is something that I thought about. Another would be that staff members would all of the staff there would be focused on the support of young children, of kindergarten students. So whether that's the music teacher, the PE teacher, interventionists, the principal, the office staff, classroom teachers would all be focused on the same age of student and really could do some important professional development together about meeting the needs of young children. And that is a potential benefit. Another thing that I thought of was that not only would the staff have a larger peer group or a larger team, but the kindergarten students would also have a larger group of peers that are focusing on and working on some of the very same skills. And as is true in all kindergarten classrooms, there's always a range of our kindergartners. So one of the things that would be exciting, potentially exciting, would be that there's the opportunity for the kindergartners to be seen as leaders in their school. And in an elementary school, a K-6 elementary school, they're not always considered the leaders. They're not always considered the children who have the very best of ideas. And so when they are, or if they were to be in a K-hub, they could, their voices could have different kinds of impacts. So that's a potential. Another thing is just focusing on creating a culture that is really specifically designed for young children. So having assemblies that were kindergarten specific or kindergarten appropriate, that were the correct length, that outdoor spaces would be designed to support the physical development of younger children, the materials, the curriculum, just all of those kinds of school-wide events would be able to be really tailored specifically to 5- and 6-year-olds. So those are just some ideas. Again, nothing, there's no current plan. These are just some brainstormed ideas for what could be, what's the potential, what could it be like. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm going to call on Greg Schwab, who will now talk about 6th grade.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. And yeah, I'm going to speak about the 6th grade cohort. And as was mentioned earlier, we have done quite a bit of advanced planning to prepare to move our 6th graders to the middle school. That was part of our 2020 capital bond. A significant part of that was to create a 6-8 middle school model across our district. And as part of this initial planning, we did discuss the possibility of doing an early implementation of the 6-8 middle school at College Place Middle School. We do know, however, that, as was mentioned, that moving 6th graders to College Place Middle School will create an impact for e-learning, which is a program that is housed currently at College Place Middle School and serves over 700 students in our district. And so we would need to consider a new location for that school. And finally, we also know that any plan to move 6th graders from elementary to middle school is going to require a significant amount of advanced planning, professional development, and planning from human resources, along with time to build the program, which in reality is probably more time than we have to prepare for the fall of 21. Again, if our goal is to do it well. And I think we all want to do it well. We don't want this just to be a solution that we move some kids in order to try to create a space issue. We want to make sure that our sixth graders have an excellent educational experience in the middle school. And so we need the time to do that right. So again, we have considered the sixth grade cohort, and these are just some of the things that we need to think about if the decision is to move sixth graders to the middle school to try to solve the space issues at Sherwood.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg, for that information. Again, my name is Helen Jung, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Schools, and just want to go over some of the next steps because I know many of you are wondering what's going to be happening, when's it going to be happening, which are very fair questions. All of this is really personal, and we all completely understand that. All of these decisions have impact on families, staff, and students. So we want to be thoughtful. And this is the reason why we went over the slides that have information from last spring. And because this is not a new conversation, the overcrowding issues have been at the forefront of the principals and the school community minds because they're living in those buildings. And so the next step for this process and to further the listening and to listen to hopes, wonderings, and fears also is to create an advisory committee. An advisory committee comprised of principals, teachers, parents, and central office leaders. And right now, we recently had some listening sessions with school staff from all the schools, the 4 locations, e-learning, College Place Middle School, Westgate, and Sherwood, staff from all of those schools, and to just listen to their hopes, fears, and wonders. And the next step will be collecting that information, and we handed out some forms via email, and we're collecting all of that so we can get some ideas, feedback, thoughts, and all of that. In addition to adult voices, our superintendent is always putting kids at the center of all we do. And we want to hear from our students. So our principals created some amazing feedback forms for our students so that we can kind of keep their voice in mind throughout all of this. How do the 5th graders feel about moving to a middle school perhaps, and all of that? And how do a College Place middle schoolers feel about receiving 5th graders and that angle as well? And so once that group comes to fruition, and I'm partnering with EEA or Edmonds Education Association, the union president, Andy Nossinger, we are building this team together, and we will review all the data, review all the comments, and create through lines and some sense making so that we can make a recommendation for our superintendent. Our superintendent has tasked us to gather voices from our stakeholders. And so we will do just that, and we will make a recommendation for our superintendent to review. Once the decision has been made, and Andy was supposed to be here, but she couldn't today, and this is kind of her section right here, there are some bargaining implications. And I did see some questions already in the Q&A about specialists and all of that, classroom teachers, specialists, band, orchestra, SPED, Title EL, which means English language, ESAs, which they're nurses, counselors, psychologists, speech pathologists, OT, occupational therapists, and that group, we need to bargain because it impacts working conditions. And we will have follow-up updates on when the decision is made. We have to take it back to the union to talk about all of the logistics of what that, the implications of any of the decisions, because it has implications, whether we create a kindergarten hub, whether we have 5th graders moving on to College Place Middle School, there are implications for bargaining. So I'd like to now hand it to Harmony, our moderator, because it's now your opportunity to ask questions and we'll answer as many as possible. Harmony?
Yes, thank you, everyone. So yes, we have a space there at the bottom of your screen where you can see the Q&A button. So please ask any questions. We really want to spend this time answering your questions, and it's really important for us as well. So I'm going to go ahead and read the first question, and then someone on the panel will give an answer. So will the PE music librarian counselor come from Sherwood, or will it be another specialist?
I can answer that question, Harmony. This is Helen. So that's a bargaining implication that we really have to discuss with the teacher union, and figure those logistics out. And thank you. If you have more feedback about that, you can always email me directly. But those decisions have to be made at the bargaining table. So the answer is we don't know right now.
Okay, thanks, Helen. So another question is, assemblies are expensive. What kind of budget would be available for having only kindergartner presenters?
I can take that one too. I remember being a principal, and yes, putting together a thoughtful, meaningful, differentiated experience for grades K-5 or grade K-6 is a challenge. And yes, they can be expensive. But here's my thing. I believe that we can create wonderful experiences for any grade level, whether it's just sixth graders or seventh graders or first graders or kindergartners. When we gear it toward a certain grade level and all of it is really developmentally appropriate for that grade level, I think it becomes more meaningful for kids. So regardless of the price implications, because I know our principals are very savvy. There's grants, there's many ways that they get around to ensuring that there's fun and amazing all school assemblies that need to take place at school. So that I could defer to also the principals. If principals here, Christy, if you want to chime in on your thoughts, I'd appreciate it too.
Are always creative of what to do with our, with our budget. And I think, there's going to be a budget at, at the kindergarten center, just like there would be a budget at any, at any other school. And so I think that whoever is there would be using those resources to support that programming there. Just like we do at Sherwood, but again, may be able to be just more targeted to kindergartners.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and ask another one. Does the sixth grade cohort account for the disruption to current fifth graders expecting to have one more year with their classmates and staff in person? Does College Place Middle really have the capacity or resources for the 80 to 100 more kids without the levy?
I'll take that one. This is Greg Schwab again. And that is a very real question that the fifth graders that currently right now are thinking they're going to have one more year at their elementary school, and we would be letting them know with very short notice that they're going to be going to College Place Middle School next year. So that's a very real thing that we would need to attend to. With regard to the question about capacity at College Place Middle School, actually there is a significant capacity at College Place Middle School. As a school, it is our smallest middle school, just over 500 students, and it has a capacity of approximately 700. So we know we have space there that we could utilize for a 6-8 middle school. And quite honestly, one of the reasons why we were looking at an early adoption of the 6-8 middle school at College Place Middle School a couple of years ago was because they were, again, with their enrollment getting so small, it was an opportunity for them to maintain some program and also allow us to pilot a 6-8 middle school. So yeah, those are all important questions, and so yes to the capacity, and yes, we would need to think about what's going to happen to those fifth graders who right now are thinking they're going to finish up at Sherwood next year.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, here's another question. Is the advisory committee already formed? And if not, how can we be involved?
I can take that one, Harmony. This is Helen again. And the advisory committee is being formed right now. And so we will be inviting teachers, parents, and central office leaders. If you are interested and you are a parent, please reach out to your school principal and let them know that you're very interested in joining the advisory via email or telephone. Please reach out to your principal, and they will forward names of teachers and parents and guardians, and I will create an invite for our next meeting, which will probably occur towards the end of January.
Thanks, Helen. And then another one, we spoke a little bit to this, but I think it would be good to expand. How do we get our children's voices heard on this?
So what will be happening is our principals will be in contact with teachers who will explain what the survey and what the form is all about, and make sure that children understand in their classroom why they're asking the things that they're asking. And I think teachers will be great at doing that. And once that happens, the teachers will share that information with the students via Zoom, of course, and then collect that information and forward that to their prospective school principals, both at Sherwood Elementary and Westgate. So there is a form that's already created for students, and teachers in those classrooms will be explaining the form to ensure that kids understand what is being asked of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Would the sixth graders, if they were to be at College Place Middle, would they be subject to the middle school model or a single sixth grade classroom as with an elementary school? Greg, you want to give that one?
Sure, absolutely. Probably a combination of both. One of the things that we know in planning for a 6-8 middle school model is that the sixth grade cohort really is different, and how we approach it educationally is different. So they would have some opportunity, like in like a 7th or 8th grader, to do some class changing, but they would also we would want to do some more blocking of classes. So English, social studies, math, science, for example, would be a couple of examples of classes that we might block. So it would be a combination of both, with, again, the goal being to try to keep their transitions to a minimum, because we know that transitions between classes can be disruptive for students, and making sure that first year in a middle school is successful, and doing that by ensuring that they have a little bit of both, some common teachers, but also the opportunity to experience a little bit of what middle school is like.
Thank you. There's two that are kind of similar. So are these changes being looked at for fall 2021? And I can answer that. That is yes. And the next question kind of rolls into that. So if a kindergarten hub is created, would it actually be ready for the 21-22 school year? And Lydia, I'm thinking maybe you can talk a little bit about how former Woodway Elementary how quickly that could be, the physical space be ready for our kinders.
Definitely by this summer or during this summer. Again, we last used it as a elementary school for when we were remodeling an existing elementary school. We recently put on a new roof. We're making sure all the wiring is current, because no matter what decision we reach for 21-22, we do recognize that we want to keep that building in good shape for future use, whatever that future use is. So it would involve acquiring, tables and chairs and things, but the infrastructure is ready to go.
Thank you, Lydia. And one thing that I haven't quite seen, but Christy, I'd like to kind of call you out. I think it's interesting when we talk about moving sixth graders as one option, and what that frees up the space at Sherwood. So everyone who's participating tonight and tuning in, they are probably familiar, many of them, with your campus. And so I think it's really interesting to know what you would gain if kindergarten were to go to a hub, or what you would gain if sixth graders were to go somewhere else.
Right. And many families know at Sherwood, some of the ways that we have been working with our space issues is by sharing spaces. And so over the past few years, we've had different grade levels, depending on our configuration, that have been sharing classes. So having like 2 classrooms, but three teachers, 3 classrooms, sort of sharing that 2 classroom space. This year right now, our 6th grade classrooms, we have technically 3 classrooms, but I mean, if we were in school, they would be sharing 2. They would be sharing 2 spaces. So if 6th grade went into middle school, that would be 2 classrooms that we would get. And then right now we have 4 physical kindergarten classrooms. And so that would, if we moved into a kindergarten hub, that would free up 4 classrooms.
Thanks, Christy. So I do want to read one. It's more of a comment from one of our attendees tonight. I worked in a kindergarten center. Once we figured out the organization, it was wonderful for kids. We created such a safe environment, and the professional development geared toward kindergarten needs was the absolute best. So thank you, Ashley, for that comment. And then one of the questions was, when will the decision particularly if for families on right now with fifth graders, when would that decision be made if that were to be the final choice? Helen, Greg?
Yeah, I can take that one. This is Helen. And, we're trying to, we don't want to speed through the process because we want an authentic process. However, our goal is to ensure that we have a tentative decision to be shared with the board by the end of February, early March. That's our hope. We'll see how things pan out, but we owe our families this information as soon as possible. And we do feel the urgency. It is coming up in the fall, and families need to have information to make decisions. And so we're going to be working as fast as we can while still honoring the process, and to make sure that it doesn't feel rushed and it does feel authentic.
Thank you, Helen. And then one side comment is we do have a Google form that we have in both English and Spanish that we want all of our Sherwood families and staff as well to fill out. So those links are going to be available on an upcoming slide. And Christy is also going to be emailing those links out to her families here at Sherwood. So please, please, please take time to fill those out. That is really important feedback, comments, ideas. It asks for what are your thoughts? I mean, maybe you have a better idea that we haven't even thought of. So we really do want community input, as Helen said. Here's another one. Would creating a kindergarten hub mean that school would have a full office staff with the principal, office manager, office assistant, etc., as well as a librarian or a library? Would this be the creation of a new school essentially and possibly available to have capital funds? I'm not sure. Lydia?
Well, I will certainly take the capital funds question. This is Lydia. So capital funds only pay for construction. It does not pay for staff, and it doesn't usually pay for things that are portable, for lack of a better word. So chairs and desks don't come from the capital fund unless it truly is a brand new building. And then another point is that the state doesn't fund capital construction. They only reimburse a very small share after you've committed some funds in certain instances. So that is why we don't have available capital funds, since the levy or the bond was not successful last February. And then as far as the staffing, we would have to identify what a smaller school needed as far as staffing. So of course, there would be library support, but would it be a full-time librarian? That would have to be determined at a later date.
Thank you, Lydia. Here's another one for you, Lydia. So as you oversee transportation, how would transportation to the kindergarten hub work? Would kinders be able to ride the Sherwood bus with their older siblings with a separate drop-off point, or would it be an entirely separate bus schedule?
So that is something that would have to be researched and identified. So right now, the two schools in question actually have different start times, whereas a kindergarten center would have the same start time. If they were staggered, then so that one school started perhaps after the kindergarten center, then with time to get between the two schools, it's possible. It's also very likely that the kindergarten students could be on their own bus as well.
Okay, thank you. Another one, we saw some good points for how the kindergarten hub could add value. How, Greg, I'm going to call you out. How, Greg, would a sixth grade cohort add value by sending our sixth graders from Sherwood to College Place Middle?
Well, as I had mentioned before, we have done a lot of advanced work because we know that the sixth graders are an interesting group because a lot of their curriculum, a lot of the standards that sixth graders are required to learn really live in the middle school world more than they do the elementary world. And so there are some really compelling pedagogical reasons why sixth graders would do well in a middle school model. So this is, when we approached this as part of the 2020 bond, we were approaching it both from solving a problem at the elementary schools in terms of space, but also really trying to move what we think is the right educational model for our sixth graders. So it even in this regard, while it still feels like we're doing it to solve a space issue, which we are. But we also know that there are really solid educational reasons why moving sixth graders to middle school is the right move, and it's something that I know we will continue to pursue in the years ahead. If we move forward with another bond at some point down the road, I think that's going to continue to be something we want to focus on as a district.
Thanks, Greg. Another question is there room to move sixth graders to Maplewood or Madrona, or is College Place the only choice?
I don't think we've considered that. I mean, that's an interesting question. I know that Maplewood and Madrona are very different programs, and they're parent co-ops. And I would have to do an analysis of the space at those schools. We haven't done that, but that is an interesting question.
Thank you. So some people are asking, what's the Google form link? How do community members get the link? So again, for those of you joining us, the link is actually on the screen right now to the Google Forms that we would really like you to fill out. Helen and her team will be really digging into that to get our information, especially as those advisory committees are created. Yeah, there's a couple other questions I think that are about what time would sixth grade cohort start their day. Helen, do you want to talk a little bit about those specifics and how that would look like?
Well, we don't know because we haven't really gone that deep into either option. But right now we are just doing these listening centers and looking for feasibility. But as the time, which bus times, which start times, and specialists, which ones, are they from Sherwood? All of those details we have not looked at. Once we make a decision on making a sound recommendation that's feasible, that will mitigate for the overcrowding issue and not just kind of gloss over it, but really mitigate it even for the short term, then we will get to all those details and share with you and share with school staff, of course, get their feedback and work with the union and the principals and also parents to give you the information as it's being laid out. But right now, because we're not leaning toward one option or another, we have not, and we've been very forthcoming about being committed to not doing that, because then we wouldn't have these listening sessions. There would be no point because we already made a decision. And so I apologize. I know that there's a lot of questions about those kinds of details that are very impactful to staff and families, but I don't have those answers because we haven't started that work yet. We're just trying to figure out which option is more feasible more than another, and then start the detailed work.
Thanks, Helen. And Christy, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Just as we talk about this, I think it's, again, you talked about the classroom gain, but you've been at Sherwood for a while. And I think from your perspective, the community might really want to hear your thoughts on kindergarten hub and benefits, or sixth grade moving to College Place Middle School. And as a principal of a very overcrowded school, what that means to you. And I think your community we'd all love to hear from you.
Well, I'm going to thank you, Harmony. I am going to be honest. Regardless of what decision we make, it's going to be a challenging decision. And I think that I think that's just unfortunately the reality of where we are in this situation. We have been working with space issues for a long time at Sherwood, and there's been pros and cons of that. People have gone through various things with us in working those things out. I think there are benefits and drawbacks in each situation. I think if we're thinking about moving sixth grade into the middle school, what Greg said before I think is true. I think there's some really good pedagogical reasons why that really makes sense, and why that would be a good move for sixth grade. Again, doing it because we're solving space issues and things like that makes that a little bit more complicated. But I think that I think there are some good reasons to do that. As I've talked with families about before, the Common Core is the Common Core standards is written 6-8, right? And so there's a lot of benefits, I think, to having that. As far as a kindergarten center too, again, I think there are a lot of benefits of having one place dedicated to early childhood learning, right? And I think having lots of different teachers who are all kindergarten teachers, having some really creative, wonderful ideas is a really is a benefit is a benefit as well. Um, I think both things have challenges. We're going to have to make moves that we don't really, that are going to be challenging and that are going to be difficult. But I do think that regardless of which one we choose, there's enough good things about both that we can really capitalize on those positive pieces. If we go with a kindergarten hub, we can really say, here's what we're going to do to make this work really well. If we move into the sixth grade, moving into College Place, we know that there's a lot of benefits to doing that. So what are we really going to focus on to make that piece work well? So if I had my magic wand, we would have a new school at Sherwood, and we wouldn't have to, we wouldn't have to make these hard decisions. But unfortunately, that's where we are. And I do know our community well enough to know that we are going to work to make the best of whatever decision we come to. And we've made hard decisions at Sherwood in the past. And when we keep kids at the focus and at the center of that, we can make a hard decision work well.
Thank you, Christy. Lydia, I'm going to put you on the spot now. I think this is actually a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit about the upcoming capital levy and just a little bit, maybe a little refresher about the bond that was unsuccessful and why this capital levy is so important. And I think we probably have a lot of folks who will be able to cast a vote about that. And so I think it's really important that we begin talking about it. And I see this as a great opportunity for that. So Lydia, I'm gonna toss it to you.
Okay, thank you. So after the unsuccessful bond measure last winter, we regrouped and reprioritized the greatest needs in the district. And we have lowered the amount of the measure that we're putting on the ballot. It's going to be a 6-year, $30 million a year levy. So $180 million over the next 6 years to do the most urgent needs and hopefully to provide a little bit of capacity mitigation throughout the entire elementary schools in the district.
Thank you, Lydia. And then your e-news came out to you, families, today or yesterday. I don't know what day it is anymore. And so there's more information about the capital levy on that as well. And then you should have received your hard copy in the mail newsletter. And on the back page of that has more information. We really want to educate our community about the reasons why and what for the capital levy is going to do. So I know we have a few more questions. We didn't quite get to all of them, but I also really want to give Dr. Balderas some time here to share his thoughts before we close out. And just a reminder, Christy's going to send you all that form. We have it in English and Spanish. You can see the links on the slide as well. And feel free to share that with others. We are also hosting a meeting tomorrow night with our Westgate families similarly. So they will have a form to fill out as well. And again, Helen's going to be using that information to guide the decisions. And I know there's a lot of emotions and we can feel them on the chat of thinking a decision's already been made, but I think it's really important that the work is still happening. And I'd really remind us all, and I don't think it's too hard to forget, but we are in such a weird time, right? With COVID-19, it really has set some of these things that we've been working on almost a year ago that we were going to really put the work into, really took a back seat. And we just really had to all dive in to focus on keeping our kids and our staff safe and healthy and continuing to give them the learning and the education that they deserve. So I just want to keep perspective too, I think is always important. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Dr. Balderas, for closing remarks. Oh, Christy, did you have something to add first?
I'm going to send the email out right after this meeting with the links in Spanish to all of our families at Sherwood. So people will be getting that within the next
Perfect. Thank you, Christy. So as Christy said, she'll be sending those out shortly. So Dr. Balderas, I will officially hand it over to you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the panelists for being on tonight. And again, I think there'll be a lot more questions, a lot more answers as we continue to work through this in a systematic manner with strong input from all parties. I think one of the things is just like the biggest problem, again, we're just out of space. We're out of space across our entire system, not just in Sherwood and Westgate, but across our entire system. So it's something that we need to really be focused on in terms of the long range facilities plan that we do have. And again, I think work that's been done already has been great work looking at a true middle level model, the 678 model for our kiddos. Uh, Again, spending the majority of my career at the middle level, that is a model that makes the most sense if we have the opportunity to do that system wide. And again, the kindergarten hub model is a model that I've seen work well as well. So I look forward to the conversations being had. Again, no decisions been made. We need to really gather as much input, and looking forward for the advisory committee to meet and be able to make some recommendations after get input from our community and other stakeholders as well. So thank you.